Yes, that they were hereafter no other than Jews. That's what they were referred to as now, because they were converted into Jews. So now, all these people, or at least the remnant that was left over, because that's exactly what had happened, as Amos says, I think it was in Amos, that, Israel would possess the remnant of Edom. That was the remnant. There it is. What did the last remnant decide to do? They decided to become possessed by the Jews. They are a Jewish possession. In other words, they were all converted into the Jewish religion and the Jewish family. I want you to think about that. There's the remnant. Alright, so let me continue. William Wilson, translator of Josephus, added this note: this account of the Idumeans admitting circumcision and the entire Jewish law from this time, or from the days of Hyrcanus, is confirmed by their entire history afterwards. This, in the opinion of Josephus, made them proselytes of justice, or entire Jews. Since that time, the Edomites have been a part of the Jewish nation, or at least the remnant, because that's all that was left. I don't know how many of them there were, but hey, they were Jewish. Even the English said when they went over to, even the Vikings, when they all went over to Ireland, there was a phrase that said, man, they're more Irish than the Irish themselves. So, I don't know, maybe it was the same way with the Idumeans. I don't know, it's just speculation. So, let me continue. It says also, some believe that the Edomites are still identifiable today as Sephardic Jews, but this is speculation. The Wycliffe Bible commentary on Obadiah confirms that judgment came upon Edom in ancient times, starting with the Nabatean invasion soon after the time of Obadiah. So you have ancient people who said these things, and you have other people in the past who are quoting from these same ancient people, and they're keeping the story the same. So let me continue. Soon after this time, Edom was pushed out of her ancient home by the nabateans, so that she had to move to the west side of the Dead Sea. Hebron was made the capital of her new home in South Judah. Oh, so they were basically pushed out. The Maccabees, especially John Hyrcanus in 125 BC, subdued and Judaized the Edomites. So now they're giving Hyrcanus with a date, 125 BC. That's a long time from when these prophecies started happening in 700 and 600 BC to finally be fulfilled in 125 BC. This was according to the Catholic Encyclopedia. This conquest of the Edomites by John Hyrcanus took place, they say, in 109 BC. So look at these dates. They're a lot different. Adam Clark's commentary, Matthew Henry, and Jameson, Fawcett, and Brown all see prophecies against Edom as being fulfilled partially by an invasion by the Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar in the early 6th century BC, so that's one part of it, and partially by the Maccabees. Jeremiah 25:21 specifically predicts the humbling of Edom by Babylon, the same power that conquered Jerusalem 5 years before the destruction of Edom. Some commentators believe that some of the early prophecies of judgment against Edom were fulfilled by the invasion of the Assyrian king Sennacherib around 700 BC. There is no hint anywhere that any of these prophecies against Edom remain to be fulfilled in modern times, or that they can be applied to the current crisis in the Middle East. We have no way of knowing whether there is soon to be peace between Jews and Arabs in Palestine, but there is nothing in the Word of God to indicate that such peace cannot take place. The prophecies of Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Obadiah against Edom should not be wrenched out of their proper historical context and made to apply to modern peoples who have no connection with Edom. The purpose of these prophecies was to assure the Hebrews at the time they were taken captive to Babylon in 586 BC that Jehovah would not allow the covetous Edomites to occupy their land. God promised that the land of Judah would remain vacant, and that the nation of Israel will be restored on that land after 70 years. Jeremiah 25 verse 11, 29 verse 10, and Daniel 9 verse 2. The application of those prophecies for today is that we should not be prideful as the Edomites were, believing that they were safe from God's wrath and could never be overthrown in their mountain fortresses. Also, we should not be covetous as Edom was, nor rejoice when judgment and suffering comes upon others. The fate of Edom and his complete disappearance from the family of nations constitute a reminder of God's justice, his judgment, and the sure fulfillment of all that he has promised in his inspired word. So, this is another account that's talking in more details here. And it's going to go back to the Nabateans, the history of Petra after Edom was wiped out. Under the Nabateans, the city of Petra flourished until 106 AD. When the Romans conquered Petra, from that time it slid into disuse to the point that Edom was almost uninhabited from the 7th to 12th century AD. It revived slightly in the 12th century when the Crusaders built a castle called Sel. Afterward, it remained so forgotten it had to be rediscovered in 1812 by Swiss traveler Johann L. Burckhardt. I don't know how to spell it. Anyway, in 1865, George Smith included 2 accounts that described Petra, what Petra was like in his day. In 1865, compare these descriptions with the prophecies written in the Bible 2,400 years later. This is what he basically says. Captain Mangles, who visited these ruins, says that when surveying the scenery of Petra, the screaming of eagles, hawks, and owls who were soaring over our heads in considerable numbers, seemingly annoyed at any approaching their lonely habitation, added much to the singularity of the scene. So plentiful, as observed by Mr. Corey, are the scorpions in Petra, that even though it was cold and snowy, we found them under the stones, sometimes 2 under one stone. The sheik and his brother, who accompanied Mr. Corey, assured him that both lions and leopards are often seen in Petra, and on the hills immediately beyond it, but that they never descended into the plain beneath. So, the scorecard. Now let's tally the score. Edom was overthrown as a nation. The nation and city had become a desolation, as Ezekiel chapter 25 verse 13, Ezekiel chapter 35 verse 4 and verse 7, and Isaiah chapter 34 verse 11 and verse 11 through 13 predicted. It has never been populated again, as Jeremiah 49:18 has predicted. It had bloody history, as Ezekiel 25 verse 13 and 35 verse 6 and verse 8 predicted. And I also want to say, when it said it's never been populated again, it's basically, I think it's talking about Edomites. Okay, Edom became populated with wild animals and birds instead of people. Isaiah chapter 34 verse 11 and verses 13 through 15 predicted.